Okay, hi everybody. Today we're on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and different ones. Just gonna make sure we don't have feedback here. Yes, we do. So just. Okay. Can you all hear me there? We'll get started in just a few moments. Today is Thursday. We're going to be doing Ethics of Our Fathers. We'll get started in just a moment. Put up the screen here. Just give me 1 second. We'll get started. You can see this as well today on Zoom and on Facebook Live and on YouTube Live. We're going to try to get the text that we have, and you can see the text we're going to be doing on Zoom or on YouTube. Okay. There we go. Share screen. Okay, we're ready to start. Yes, we're getting started now. If you follow us if you're watching on Zoom, you can then see the screen, or on YouTube Live, you can also see the screen. I'm not sure how to get the screen on Facebook as well. Let me see if it lets me. More. Just give me 1 second. Just give me a second here. The link to see it on YouTube as well, and to follow along in the text, we put up on Facebook so you can see it. And now we'll get started. Okay. Where am I? I'm just losing myself here. There we go. Okay. So, welcome to today's class. Today we're going to be talking about cultivating character, the life and the wisdom from Ethics of Our Fathers. It's going to be discussing reverse education. We're going to start with a psalm of Tehillim to get everybody better, and to make sure they feel better, and to get rid of this disease that's going on. So let's join me in saying Psalm 23. Mizmor LaDavid Adonai Eliechzer ben Yosef she'arbiteni amemenuchis na'aleini nafshi yesheviv yanchini maglei tzedek l'man shemoi gam keilch v'geit tzalmovas le'ir ara ki ati yimodi shiftecha mishantecha heimei nachamoni tarich lefanai shulchan neged tzorei deshantecha Hashem eroshi koyisi rivaya ach toiv v'chesed lefuni koyim echaye v'shafti b'reis Adonai li'orech yamim. We are discussing today Ethics of Our Fathers, Chapter 4. As we mentioned, do you not see me on the video there? What can't you see on Facebook? I see somebody wrote they can't see on Facebook. Do you see me on Facebook? You just won't be able to see the text that I'm reading. Okay. Just make sure, let me know if you see me there. Okay, so we're starting today. We're going to be doing Ethics of Our Fathers. As I mentioned before, the text for Ethics of Our Fathers is chapter 4. We have it posted on YouTube or on Zoom. You can see the text to follow along. It does not allow me to share it to Facebook Live as well. It only allows me to live stream on one of them. So the text that we're going to be starting with is the first Mishnah, the first statement or paragraph, which is mentioned in Ethics of Our Fathers, chapter 4, and it says as follows. Ben Zoma says, Zoma would used to say, who is wise? One who learns from others. As it is stated, from all my teachers I have grown wise, for your testaments, testimonials are my meditation. Then he continues, who is strong? Who is strong? The person who overpowers their own inclinations, as it is stated. Better is one who is slow to anger than one who is might, one who rules the spirit than conquers a city. Who is rich? The person who is satisfied with their lot, as it is stated, if you eat of the toil of your hands, fortunate are you and good is to you. Fortunate are you in this world and good is to you in the world to come. Who is honorable? The person who honors their fellow creatures, as it is stated, for those who honor me, I accord honor. Those who scorn me will be demeaned. We're going to focus today on this Mishnah, and this Mishnah takes us an understanding 4 different points, 4 different character traits. And over here it focuses on 4 different important aspects of life. One of them being wisdom, power, wealth, and honor. And the Mishnah, the first thing the Mishnah does is destroy any preconceived notions that we usually have in the world, which is generally we think that the common perception is when it comes to wisdom, let's take one case at a time. When it comes to wisdom, who is wise? The person who's usually the teacher is the wise one. The student is the one that is learning from the teacher, so therefore he is less wise than the student. The greater the knowledge, the more the wisdom, the more you have to share, the more you teach. And over here, the Torah takes the model and reverses it and says, really, who is the wise one? Who is the one that is considered wise? Is a person who is learning from everybody else, including those that their knowledge is inferior to them. That's number 1. Then the Mishnah continues to tell us as follows. The power. Usually we think what's considered a powerful person, somebody who's able to impose his power on others. Over here, the Mishnah tells us that's not what power is all about. Power is when you can control yourself from doing something that you may be wanting to, and you hold yourself back, as we'll soon get to. Same ideas with wealth. The common conception of a wealthy person is that someone is with an oversized ambition and a drive to obtain lots of money and possession. That's considered a wealthy person. The Torah says no, wealth means that you're happy with your lot. And the same is with honor. Honor is usually understood as a product of what a person has achieved, whether it's wisdom, power, or wealth. And it's only natural that other people should revere such an individual. But the Torah says no. The Torah's idea of honor is just the opposite. The Torah honors a person who truly respects and honors other people. And those who occupy not necessarily the people on the higher rung of the ladder, but people who respect and not only tolerate, but respect, and especially those people who have a lower situation than themselves in life. So now let's look at these 4 situations and these 4 analyzations that the author of the Mishnah teaches us of how we can do it. Because at first glance, how is it possible that we as individuals, regardless of what level we're at in our knowledge or intellectual capability, the very fact that a person is seemingly more knowledgeable, shouldn't that make him the one to teach? Why is he the one learning? But in fact, in Hebrew, if you look at the term Talmid Chacham, which means a scholar, literally means a Talmid Chacham, a student That's what makes you knowledgeable. In fact, the word Torah scholar literally means a wise student. I mean, it's become a translation, Talmud Chacham to Torah scholar, but literally if you translate it, it means a Torah student. In fact, the 16th century sage, Rabbi Shmuel de Useda, once said, one can never separate the word student from the word wise. Because the moment a person thinks of themselves, stops thinking themselves as a student, they no longer can be called wise. In order to be considered a student, a wise person, you need to be considered a student learning from everything that's going on. Well, how is that possible? And the question is, how do we go about learning from every person? And especially people who may be intellectually and morally inferior than ourselves. And how is this about? So there's a number of ways to answer this question. One approach is that you can learn how not to behave from a person. You see somebody, you don't necessarily have to learn from what they do. You can learn from them what not to do. Another explanation, as the Baal Shem Tov would always say, whenever you see another person, you're basically seeing a mirror of yourself. And if you see a negative attitude in that person, you're basically seeing a negative attitude within yourself. It's a mirror reflection of yourself. Your own imperfections and your own flaws is what's magnified from watching the other in the person. But then there's a second approach, is to find a way to exploit that negative trait in a positive way. For example, the Talmud condemns the concept of envy. But when it comes to studying of Torah, envy is a good character trait. As the Talmud uses, in fact, in the Talmud of Baba Batra, it tells us that envy among students is what creates and increases wisdom. Hasidic teachings tell us also the concept of pride, arrogance, those are reprehensible. A person has to continue to tell himself that all these type of negative behaviors, what he can learn from and how he has to use them in a spiritual way, in a way to make him smarter and educate and make his way of serving God better. There's a very famous saying by the great Rabbi Zusha of Anipali. It's in the Hayom Yom. And Rabbi Zusha of Anipali was a contemporary of the first Chabad Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe. Rabbi Zusha of Anipali was a student of the Maggid of Mezrich, and he used to say the following: you can learn 7 things from a thief. He used to say, I used to learn 7 things from a thief. And he enumerates as follows. It's pretty interesting. Number 1, what he does, he keeps himself. Number 2, he is willing to take risks to get his goal. Number 3, he is meticulously careful with all the particulars of the operation, regardless of whether it's a major component or a small detail. Nothing goes by unnoticed. He invests great effort in what he does. 5, he is swift. 6, he's always optimistic. And 7, even if he fails the first time, he keeps coming back for another try. Over here, you see 7 ideas that a thief does. You would think, what's a thief? How can I learn from a thief? But you see over here very clearly that these 7 character traits are something that we can all learn from and how we can be a better person as well. And finally, the most important thing that a Torah scholar or a student or somebody that's wise, regardless of what level you're at, always learning from people around you, but also realizing that everything God created in this world is inherently good. And therefore, the negativity that we see is only an externality that is because of our dirt that we have in our glasses. There's a very interesting story that the Talmud describes about Rabbi Elazar bar Reb Shimon. Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai will be celebrating his great day on Tuesday. And this was his son, Rabbi Elazar, who's a little bit of a rough character. And once Rabbi Elazar bar Reb Shimon was coming out of his house, and he was walking down the path, and he was on his way to the city, and he sees a fellow who the Talmud describes an ugly person. And the ugly fellow greets him, and he says, "Peace unto you, Rabbi." However, he did not return the greeting, and instead he said, "Empty one and ugly one, how ugly are you? Are all the people in your city as ugly as you are?" That was the statement Rabbi Elazar said to him. The man replied, and listen to the man's reply. Tells Rabbi Elazar bar Reb Shimon, he says, "I don't know if they're all ugly as I am. But if you have a problem with my looks, go to the craftsman who made me and tell him how ugly this vessel is which he made. Rabbi Elazar bar Reb Shimon, realizing what he did wrong, he quickly got off his donkey, prostrated himself, and asked the man for forgiveness. The man said, no, I'm not the one to give you forgiveness. You have to go to my craftsman, the creator, and ask him and tell him how ugly is the vessel he made. Rabbi Elazar kept walking behind the person until they reached the city limits. When they came to the city, all the people of the city came to greet the great rabbi. While this person, as he saw, was walking, Rabbi Elazar bar Reb Shimon was walking behind him. And the people asked him, what's going on here? So he said, this is what this rabbi said to me. So they asked him, please forgive him. He comes from a great man. He is a great rabbi. Please forgive him. And the fellow said, I will only forgive him on the condition that he commits that he will never act in such a way again. Immediately after that, Rabbi Elazar bar Reb Shimon went into the study hall and expounded on the concept that a person should always be pliant as a reed and not to be hard as a cedar, realizing his problem of humility that he needed. Over here, we see something very interesting. Rabbi Elazar bar Reb Shimon was not upset about the way the person looked physically. He was actually demeaning the individual for his spiritual look. And he said, how ugly are you? How come you don't have any Torah and mitzvahs? Is everybody from your city behaving the same way? To which the person responded, I am a creation of God. I am inherently good. If you see a problem with me, you are really, in essence, complaining about the way God made me. What you see is a mirror reflection. From over here, we see something very amazing. The way Rabbi Elazar bar Reb Shimon realized what he did wrong, understanding how this Mishnah tells us, from all my teachers I have grown wise. From your testimonials are my meditations. King David is telling us from all his teachers. What does it mean from all his teachers? Telling us that every single person in life is a teacher for him. Every single moment is a teaching moment. And we have to be able to learn from every single person, regardless how sinful they may be. Even King David, people who tried to kill him at all times, he still called him his teacher because he learned something from everybody. We need to employ our wisdom to discover and find the wisdom that we can see in every single person. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Barditchev once saw a wagon driver, I'm sure you heard me say the story once before, who in his haste on his trip was, while he was still praying, he was greasing the wheels of his wagon. And Rabbi Levi Yitzchak looked at his eyes in heaven and said, Master of the universe, how wonderful your people are, that even while they're greasing their wheels of their wagon, they're praying to you. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak was a master in learning from every single person and seeing the good within every person. Every single person has something that we can learn from. There is no person who's too low to have as a teacher, but also there's no person who's too lofty who can learn from everybody else. Every single person can have somebody they can learn from. The Mishnah insists that we can learn something from everyone, from the smallest person to the greatest person. But there's another lesson that we can learn as well. That Mishnah tells us. Every single person that we come to and encounter, as King David said, he had many teachers. But over here it tells us that everything we look in life has a two-dimensional way of looking at it. There's the two eyes, the eye to see the good and maybe the negative. But everything we see, the 2D image, to realize and appreciate in everything in life, there's good and then there's the opposite of good. And over here we are told that when we look at a person, look to learn from whatever that person has, that you can learn from them and at the same time what you can share with them. Let's move now to the second part of the Mishnah, which tells us about who is strong, a person who conquers his own inclinations. Usually we see external challenges as a test of our strength, but our greatest challenge is a challenge that comes from within. The most powerful thing that we can do is to control our own instincts. Something that when a time we'd want to get angry, a time we'd want to say something to somebody else, but we hold ourselves in, that is the most powerful person we can be. And our own greatest challenge and our greatest enemy, so to speak, is something that may be a negative behavior that we have within ourselves. Our greatest challenge in life is that we need to conquer our own inclinations. They say a story about Reb Chaim of Tzanz, who was one of the first Tzanz Rebbes that lived in about 1797, 1876. His name was Reb Chaim Halberstam, who led to be a very great Hasidic dynasty many generations later. And while he was in Hungary, he wanted to have a talus that was coming from the land of Israel, but a talus katan, not one that he wrapped himself in, one that he would wear under his garments that has a big hole in it, and he would wear it. And finally, he was able to purchase a piece of material that came from the land of Israel. He gave it to a tailor to be able to do, and the tailor made the corners and was going to make everything perfectly for him to put the tzitzis inside. Mistakenly, the tailor, when he was cutting out the circle to be able to put the hole on it, he folded the cloth, which caused that should be 2 holes in it. And over here, he didn't know what to do. He ruined the garment that the Rebbe was waiting for so many months to wear. He comes and with trepidation stands in front of Reb Chaim of Tzanz, and he apologizes for what happened. And he shows him, I see it's unwearable that it has 2 holes in it. To which Reb Chaim responded and says, no, my dear friend, a talus katan really needs 2 holes. 1 hole to put my head in, and 1 hole to teach Chaim not to be upset. The Mishnah is teaching us a very important lesson. It is easy for us to show strength and impose it on somebody else. Show strength and impose it on yourself. Conquer your own self-inhibitions. What is the word conquering? If we look in the Mishnah, uses the terminology of conquering a city. A king who wants to conquer a city has 2 methods of doing it. Either he can go and destroy the place and level it, but what did he gain? He has a bunch of rubble. What's the best thing this king can do? Can go and he should become king of a flourishing city, where now not only does he didn't crush the people and it's all rubble that he has to rebuild, but now he gains more. He has another territory for himself. The same ideas as well when we come to talking about conquering our own inhibitions. Conquering our own anger, our greed and pride. It's not to obliterate them, but to use these in a positive and constructive way. As we mentioned in the first case, learning from everybody, learning from your own negative faults and making them positive and making it something which is useful. The third one is who is rich. A person who is satisfied with his lot. More money, more possessions never bring a person satisfaction, in the words of the sages. A person who has 100 always wants 200. You have 200, you always want 400. You always will want more. On the other hand, a person who is satisfied with what they have is doubly rewarded. First of all, a person is restful from any type of anxieties or stresses of the never-ending pursuit of material riches. And secondly, it gives the person time to devote himself to worthy pursuits and times and things that have the world to come. You know, in English, there's a very famous saying called the rat race. We're all in the rat race, always trying to get ahead of somebody else. But in fact, this is not a word that came about with the English usage in sometime in the middle of the 20th century. This is a Talmudic saying that the Talmud says that we're all inhabitants of a world compared to rodents. And just like rodents scurry about back and forth, not knowing why they're going back and forth, so too we, the inhabitants of this world, we scurry, we come, we go, we come, we go, without knowing why, what, where, what are we doing it for? This Talmud tells us a story about Alexander of Macedonia was traveling around, and in his travels he came to the gates of the Garden of Eden. And he cried out, "Open up gates for me. Give me something." So they told him, "Sorry, Charlie, this is not where you're in charge. This is the world to come. This is the gates of the God." He said, "I'm a king. Give me something." So they gave him an eyeball. And he went and he weighed this eyeball that he got against all the gold and silver, and it was not equal. He said to the sages, "What's going on over here?" They told him, "This is the eyeball of a human being, that as much as it has, it will never be satisfied." But they told him, "Watch this." They took a little bit of dust, put it on the eyeball, covered it, and immediately it weighed down all the gold and silver. What were the sages saying? That after the body is buried in dust, all the gold and silver, all the ambition, all the scurrying, all the running and rushing is nothing worth. It leaves it. The Talmud is telling us over here as well Talmud is telling us the concepts and teaching us that greed and ambition may be part of the human nature, but they have to be used for a good and godly purpose. Rabbi Shneir Zalman of Liadi once said, the first Chabad Rebbe, spirituality and materialism are two opposites. What's a virtue in one is a flaw in the other. And what's a flaw in one is a virtue in the other. To be satisfied with one's lot in material things is a beautiful virtue. To be satisfied with what one attains spiritually is a terrible flaw. Spiritually, we should always utilize that type of ambition and greed to try to become better spiritually. But physically, materialistically, to be happy with what we have will save us a lot of stress and anxiety. And finally, let's come to the last part of this Mishnah. Who is honored? A person who honors his fellow creatures. The Mishnah tells us, what does this mean? That we have to be able to honor every single person, as we spoke about in the first part of this section, to honor a fellow being, no matter who the person is. As we mentioned with the story of Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon, the craftsman who had made the body. Every single human being, every single person, the very fact that God created them, put them on this world, has a God-given talent and a God-given reason of why they're here. And we as an individual have to honor and respect, meaning instead of seeing the person as the lowest common denominator, look at them for their highest virtue, for the very fact that God gave them a soul, put them in this world and walking in this earth, meaning that they have what to contribute and bring to this world. God chose to express his goodness into this human being, into this creature. And he created this person in his image because all of us are created in the image of God. Our job is only, our task is to actualize that divine image and discover it within ourselves and our fellow human beings. So as we look at this Mishnah, to summarize, teaches us how we, by looking at ourselves and looking at the people around us as a mirror reflection, we can become better people, serving ourselves better and serving all of humanity, making this world a better place for all. Thank you all for joining us today. This is Lunch Break with the Rabbi at 1 p.m. On every Thursday, we do Ethics of Our Fathers, Cultivating Our Character. Monday through Wednesday, we learn about exploring Jewish concepts in Judaism, laws and reasons. And tomorrow at 1 p.m., we will have an overview and discussion of the Torah reading. Hope you had a wonderful time. If anybody has any questions, feel free to share them in the comments box, whether it's on Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, either one of these. Otherwise, have a wonderful day. Just somebody made mention that I should mention in the class. If you call, I think it's 311, and you're over 65, and you give them your name and your address, you can get a free mask, face covering, this one that you can continue to watch, a cloth one. So make sure to utilize that. Otherwise, have a wonderful day. Take care. God bless.